Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Covington City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 28th. Thank you all for being here today. In compliance with state law, City Council special and regular meetings are held in a hybrid format with in-person, telephonic, and virtual options for public viewing and participation. With that, we're calling this meeting to order. And Krista, if you could please call the roll.
Councilmember Soltis. Councilmember Porter.
Here.
Councilmember Hartsock.
Here.
Councilmember Harjausen.
Present.
Councilmember Simomo.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Here.
Mayor Wagner.
Here.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. Look for a motion to excuse Christina Soltis.
So moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded to excuse Christina Soltis. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Christina has been excused. With that, I'd like to ask everybody, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Next is approval of the agenda. Regan, do we have any changes tonight?
No changes, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as posted. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. Next is reports of commissions. First up is our Economic Development Council. Do we have anybody here from CEDAS? Okay. Our Youth Council? Do we have anybody from? Welcome. Katie, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Good evening, council. So what we did last meeting was we did a Make a Difference Day report where a couple of our members went to the cleanup in the neighborhood. I thought it was very fun. It was very useful in the community to try and build each other up. Trunk or treat also went very well. We actually got a lot of support and a lot of interest in what we were doing there. So a lot of people heard about Youth Council and we kind of spread our word over there. Chuck is also working on the Senior Access Project, the phone tree that we're having for tech support for the elderly and anyone who struggles with technology. And then new business is one of our members, Harsleen, her passion project, the socks and underwear drive, is going very well. We'll also be in attendance on Saturday, the 2nd, for the tree lighting. We'll have a little table and we'll have these letters to Santa available for the kids to write, and then we'll respond at the next meeting. And the next meeting is December 9th, which is also our retreat.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions for Katie? Thank you. And the hygiene drive at Fred Meyer, I saw it. It's very good. Thank you. They looked like they were being very successful.
I'll relay that information there.
Great. Thanks, Katie.
Of course. Have a good one.
You too. Next up is Arts Commission. Patty, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Super short update tonight. I wanted to let you know that the last 2 months, Jonathan's been out of town. Maya's filled in for us and she fits right in. So if you ever need a replacement, she's the one. We have set our date for our yearly retreat for January 13th and a tentative schedule of what we want to discuss. So that will be coming up. One of the things we are going to be discussing is our priority list for projects. And we have already kind of, based on the information that we got back from you guys and some other projects that we already have in motion, we've already kind of set a tentative priority list, but we'll be adding to it with other ideas that come across at that meeting. And the utility box call is coming up for the 3rd round, phase 3. And we are going to be, Maya was going to check with Selena to see what utility boxes were available for us at this time. We think that there have been more added in the city since we originally started the program. So hopefully we'll have some more options. And that's it for tonight. Any questions?
Great. Thanks, Patty. Is there any questions?
All right.
Thank you. Oh,
Sorry, when can we expect the art in CCP? Did you say that? Sorry.
NCCP, I don't have an update on that yet. It was the last update we had. It was left up to some contract negotiations with someone in the
Okay.
city. Jonathan hasn't been here to give us an update, so
Okay.
I'm sure it's all happening. It's just, we don't know about it right this
Okay,
time.
thank
All right,
you.
thanks.
Thanks, Patty. Next is Equity, Cultural and Social Justice Commission. Chuck, welcome.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. We did not meet this month. We scheduled our November meeting for December 7th, so there's really no new business. We continue to work with the Youth Council on the project that we're working on with regard to community outreach. And that's about where we are right now. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, and thank you for the wrapping the van.
Oh,
It
thank
really
you.
worked well at Trunk or Treat.
Yep, it looks great.
It does
It's a
look great.
great idea that the Youth Council had to wrap that.
Yes, it was.
Yep.
Except they made me go with Shaggy.
You fit perfect, as long as I didn't have to go with Scooby.
Well, we wanted you to.
You had a question?
No, I was just gonna say, we do have in follow-up to previous stuff on tonight's council discussion of joining.
That's,
Gary.
that is
So,
correct.
yeah,
Yep.
So,
Right. Thank you, Chuck.
I'll speak to you later.
Okay, thank you. Human Services Commission, is there anybody here from Human Services? No. Parks and Recreation Commission? Oh, Laura,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. At our last meeting, we had an update on the new Aquatic and Recreation Center. So, which is very interesting. The consultant came, presented the two options. These are the options that you and anybody else would have seen on the survey that was available for several months. That survey has closed. They've gathered all the data. So we looked at that data. Looked at kind of the feedback from the public, looked at the options ourselves in a little bit more detail. I do want to pass on to the council that the Parks Commission's unanimous recommendation was to go with the one-story option. That was also in line with the feedback that we received from the public. That one-story option did seem to be the favored option. It does allow for more things. Additional pool space. The idea of not having two receptions on two different levels was popular too. So yeah, some of the things that we brought up as a commission as we looked through this with the consultant was the idea of more gym space. That seems to be a theme that we hear over and over from park staff as we look at the pinch points in our city. Where our recreation space is maxed out and gym space comes up over and over again, particularly gym space for older kids, young adults, youth. The elementary schools, we have several, but elementary school gyms are often not suited for the needs of high schoolers. So the one-story option does provide two gyms versus one. The therapy pool was a very, very popular, both in the survey and also the idea of having that as an asset to the community, something that could be used by community partners. That was also a selling point. The walking track was huge. The walking track, when I was involved in the joint project between Covington and Maple Valley, I almost think that was what got people the most excited. And so the one-story option does preserve an indoor walking track. And I already mentioned the single reception area. Some concerns that we had were just, was there enough spectator seating available at the pool? Would there be enough space for staff in what they had already sketched up? But the what you saw in the survey is truly just a suggestion. Nothing has been set in stone yet about what that facility would actually look like. It's just their conception of what could be and what types of things would be available in a building of that size. So you will get this information yourself. I think it's your next city council meeting. Yeah, December 12th. And so in a study session, but I did want to pass on the recommendation from the Parks Commission. We also heard from Jackie with the Recreation and Cultural Arts update. A lot of the things we heard from her kind of dovetail into what we were talking about with a new pool/community center. they're full. The classes are full. We are maxed out space wise, and it's a great problem to have in many ways, but it's a tricky problem to solve because usually it involves a lot of dollar signs. And then of note, our next meeting, we have a special meeting on December 13th. We're going to be taking a look at the Jenkins Creek Trail projects. And I know I'm always coming at you with pools and trails, but those are the things that, according to the pros plan, seem to be the most desired by members of the community. So we're pushing that forward as best we can. So any questions?
Questions for Laura?
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
And next is Planning Commission. David Cottle is online. Welcome, David.
Hi there. Can you see me and hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Wagner and City Council. Apologies for not being there tonight, since as you can tell by my voice, I'm fighting a nasty cold for about the last 2 weeks. We had the following agenda topics for the Planning Commission meeting on November 2nd. The draft work plan, legislative mandates overview for 2024 was identified. We have 3 categories in that, of course, the ongoing Planning Commission work, the 24 to 27 Community Development Long Range Teamwork Plan, and of course, legislative mandates. We reviewed the 2024 update to the comp plan element of economic development. Key challenges and summary points in that include the current focus is on improving the downtown built environment to support businesses, discourage crime, and develop a mutually supportive relationship with Lake Point. Looking for post-pandemic opportunities to capture increased demand for recreational shopping and lifestyle experiences. One key note, in 2020, 4,233 people came to work in Covington, and 10,774 Covington residents left for jobs located outside the city. Only 223 people both lived and worked in the city. One of our target goals is to make it easier to live and work in Covington. Significant agenda items for the next Planning Commission meeting on January 18th, 2024 is a public hearing for the docket parks element amendments, public engagement and updates for the housing survey and the open house regarding the comp plan update. We may also have additional draft comp plan elements, documents to discuss and to review. In retrospect, it has been a very busy and productive year for the Planning Commission. Some of the key elements that we covered was, of course, the comp plan update open house, which was very successful. We had 3 new members welcome to the Planning Commission. Phase 2 of the housing needs assessment. Comp plan update is now underway regarding the equity approach plans. We had the comprehensive plan for tagline brand imagery for Covington 2044, a thriving community for all. Covington Days booth support, climate action grant review, preparation of a climate vulnerability index. We had a SEPA, State Environmental Policy Act amendments thresholds, and also a 2023 plan docket item for the Parks and Recreation, the pros plan recommendation to the City Council. My closing message to the council, wishing you a joyous holidays at the end of this year with a little more sparkle, a little less stress, and celebrating your good health and happiness throughout the upcoming year. Glad to provide you with this status update, although it's a little raspy, for the Planning Commission. Any questions?
Council have any questions for David? David, thank you very much for the very in-depth conversation, and I hope you feel better, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great evening.
You
Thanks,
too.
David.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That concludes our reports of commissions. And next up is recognition of our Adopt a Street volunteer groups. I would like to ask council to please join me in front of the dais. So thank you again for everybody being here tonight. We're going to do this a little differently since we have so many volunteers. I'm going to read the recognition, and then we're going to go into our reception. And during the reception, we'll call each of the groups up here, and I will hand you each your own proclamation, and you can get pictures with us if you wish. Okay. So council, I'll ask you to stay up here during the reception.
Okay.
We're doing it because someone doesn't need cake like myself. All right. On March 1st, 2011, the city of Covington began coordination and administration of the new Adopt a Street program. The Adopt a Street program is designed to reduce litter within the city limits of Covington. Over the past 12 years, our Adopt a Street volunteer groups have helped decrease litter and littering in our community. Currently, we have 14 Adopt a Street groups. We'd like to recognize each of these groups this evening for their considerable contributions in helping control litter and keeping our city, our community beautiful. This past year, our volunteers racked up a total of 275 hours of litter cleanup. They collected over 240 bags of trash. Thank you. That is. And I forgot Mason, sorry. Okay, all right. Sometimes the mic does not pick me up. So we're going to recognize each of you, each of your groups. But some of our volunteers were unable to attend tonight's council meeting, so we'll make sure that they receive their certificates. We appreciate you being here this evening. On behalf of myself, our city council, the greater Covington community, I want to thank all of you for your ongoing efforts to keep Covington clean. The impact of keeping our streets clean can't be overstated. Having clean streets, having all the hard work that each of you put in, keeping our community clean and green is outstanding. It improves our quality of life. It helps reduce crime, and it makes Covington a great place to live, work, and play. So thank you all very much for what you do. So the list, let me read off all the names of the groups first here, and then we'll go into our reception and we'll call each group up. We have the Alliance Bible Group, Stephanie Huntseeker Real Estate, City of Covington Employees, the Covington Maple Valley Seahawkers, the Covington Chamber of Commerce, the Covington Girl Scouts, the Covington Youth Council, the Kent Junior ROTC, St. John the Baptist Church, Red Canoe Credit Union, Covington City Council, Maple Hills Community, Advantage Business Builders BNI, Real Life Church, Covington Rotary, and Linda Fenster. So with that, again, thank you all very much. And we will go into our reception and we will start, we'll call each group up individually. We'll hand you your proclamation of thanks. And then if you wish to have pictures with us, you're welcome to be up here and we'll get pictures. I'm allowed the picture opportunity. I'm not going to put a time on the reception because I'm not sure how long it's going to take. So we're not going to rush it.
Can you please state a time for the record?
No. I've been watching Suits. No. Let's see, what do we have? We have 12 groups here tonight, so say 20 minutes.
So we will return at 7:42.
We'll return at 7, let's just say half an hour. We'll return at 7:50.
Thank you, Mayor.
We'll make Mark happy. All right. Thank you all. There are cookies in the back. There is coffee. There's hot cocoa and tea. The hot water you have to get out of the water machine here, but help yourselves and we'll call each group up. And Regan, are you going to call the group?
Yeah, let's start with.
Good evening, everybody. And we are returning back from our reception for the recognition of our Adopt a Street volunteer groups. And with that, we will go into our first public comment period. Speakers will state their name, address, and organization. Comments are directed to the city council, not the audience or staff. Comments are to be related to city business. Comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to no more than 4 minutes per speaker. For attendees participating virtually, click the raise hand button in Zoom. For attendees participating by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. Once the city grants you permission to speak, press unmute if participating virtually, or dial *6 to unmute if participating by phone. Notice to all participants pursuant to state law, RCW 42.17A.555, campaigning for any ballot measure or candidates in City Hall and or during any portion of the council meeting, including the audience comment portion of the meeting, is prohibited. With that, I will look at our sign-in roster. I don't have anybody on here. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council? Seeing nobody, is there anybody online wishing to address council? Seeing nobody raise their hand, we will have a second. I will close this public comment period and we'll have a second opportunity towards the end of our meeting. With that, we'll move into approval of the consent agenda consisting of items C1 through C8.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda has been approved. Next up is the public hearing. Tonight, we have a public hearing to receive testimony from the public regarding the proposed fiscal year 2024 operating and capital budget. This being the date set and proper notices having been posted and published in accordance with state and local law, the public hearing is hereby declared open. And Casey, do you have any updates that you'd like to give us?
I do. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So tonight is the second of our 2 public hearings for the budget, and I just wanted to go over the changes worksheet with you, all the things that have taken place since we originally gave you the budget workbook. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through line by line and tell you what changes that we've made to the budget. First off, the top section that says the adjustments to the fiscal year 2023, those are adjustments to our estimated actuals that we've made. So first off, we've transferred money back from the Welcome Park CIP project that's not going to be taking place. So that money is coming from the CIP fund back to the general fund and back into the park reserve. Excuse me. And then CIP 1807. That is the maintenance facility project. They didn't get as far along as they thought this year, so we're moving that budget to next year. So I'm reducing this year's base budget estimated actuals, and you'll see it down below where I'm moving it down to 2024. We're just shifting those dollars around. I'd say most of these changes, we're just shifting monies around from one year to the next. The next thing we have is the sidewalk panel project, $70,000 in the street fund. This is just a project that they're doing based on the new TBD sales tax revenues that came in this year. Wasn't in our estimated actuals, so we're just getting that in. And then the skip ILA distribution, that's just, it was in the 2024 budget. They got the contract signed early, so we're just moving that portion back to 2023 and getting that paid out to them. That's the funds that we had accrued all the way through 2022, and it was that big lump sum payment that we were going to make to them. And then from here on out, it's just going to be our annual collections that'll be going to them for the construction funds. And then we have the Kent School District Signal Project contribution, and this is just an additional revenue that's coming in for the signal project that we had done and they partnered with us on, and those revenues are coming back to us. And I think I missed, oh no, I didn't. That was the maintenance shop, $750,000. So then the next section is revenue adjustments that we've made, and this is revenue adjustments to the 2024 budget. So Krista was successful in getting a public defense grant, so I've added that in. And then down below in the base budget adjustments, I've also added the expense. So I've got the revenue and the expense outlined there. And then we also have a transfer in from the general fund to the CIP 1127. And this was, council has already approved this through a blue sheet a couple of months ago, maybe just last month. And this is coming out of reserves, and I'll show you down below how they're coming out. And then we have CIP 1805. This is another project that isn't moving forward next year. So we've removed the revenue as well as the expense down below. And then we have property tax adjustment. Our final levy worksheet came in higher, $25,000 higher. So I've added that additional, property tax revenue. And then as far as the sidewalk panel project goes, that 70,000 that I showed you up above, because the street fund was, their fund balance was exactly where it needed to be. We needed to reduce their transfer out to the overlay project to still make them zero. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat tonight. So what I mean by that is we just reduced the transfer that was going to the overlay fund by the $70,000. It's just a shifting of dollars just to cover that sidewalk panel repair that we did this year. And then the base budget adjustments, I talked about the public defense increase, that's the grant, the 1127, those are coming out of the reserve funds. The CIP 1807, that's the maintenance shop that I talked about. We're moving the funds from 2023 to 2024. And then this next one is a new one. This is streets and swim overtime for call outs. Our policy was to pay 2 hours of call out pay every time a maintenance worker needed to come out for something. Our new policy is now 3 hours. So we had to make an adjustment just to account for that extra hour of time. And then we have some park and recreation department staffing changes. This is also a new one. This is just a little bit of a reorg that's happening in their department, and this was the cost to make that happen. The next one is I skipped over the CIP 1805. Again, this is just removing that from the expense side, like I removed it from the revenue up above. Then we have the Welcome Park base budget removal. Again, we removed the transfer from the general fund. This is just us removing that expense. And then we have the factoring contract increase. Again, this is another one that's already come to council for approval, but it wasn't in the budget. So I'm just getting that 106,000 in there for the swim fund. And then we have the city council salary increase. This was the adopted change for increasing salaries for next year. And then this is just the reduce the street transfer. Again, it's just the other side. I have the revenue above. This is just the expense side. And the skip ILA, again, this is taking it out of 2024 because I moved it up into 2023. And then for the RASCI increase, this is a new one. This is $30,000. We just received notice that our contract next year will be going up by that amount. So we had to get that in there. And then we have Sean's 2 decision card changes that are in there. So we've got the annual outdoor town hall meeting as well as the security for the Independence Day at CCP. And then I just wanted to walk you through just a couple of changes that occurred in the reserve funds. So that $1,070,000 that was transferred to CIP 1127, council directed staff to basically figure out which reserve funds to take those out of. And we took it 1/3 out of the aquatic center fund, 1/3 out of the parks reserve fund, and 1/3 out of the town center reserve fund. So those reserve funds are reflected that way. We also added back in the Welcome Park, since that project's not taking place, we moved that $354,500 back into the Parks Reserve. So that is reflected there. And then there was also one other change made to the Parks Reserve fund. I had accounted for some monies twice and Lindsay caught my error, so I made that adjustment as well. So always helps to have a second set of eyes on things. So those are all the changes that have taken place so far, and I'm happy to answer any questions after the hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The ground rules for public comment during the public hearing are as follows. When your name is called, step up to the microphone, give your name and state whether you are a resident of the city of Covington or not. Please limit your comments to 4 minutes. The city clerk will set a timer that will go off when your time is up. When the timer goes off, please wind up promptly. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council on the 2024 budget? Is there anybody online wishing to address council on this topic? Seeing nobody raise their hand, I will declare this public hearing closed. And council, do you have any questions? Beth?
$30,000 for the increase in what was our normal annual amount? That seems like a lot.
The animal control, I think it went up to almost $100,000.
Wow.
Did they say why? Is it just a general increase in
A general increase and our portion of calls and things and service levels, things like that, it has increased. And so we're paying a bigger portion of those costs as well. I'm almost.
And that's not wild animals either, like coyotes or bobcats or any of that. That's just strictly.
Right.
Domestic. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have $70,000 in the base budget and I'm projecting to need in the 90s, but 100.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Casey. This comes back to us on December 12th for a final vote. Okay, thank you. Next is new business item number 2, the 2023 third quarter financial report. Casey.
All right. Get my screen shared again. All right, third quarter reports. I was hoping if that's what everybody was in here for, everybody wanted to see what I had to say. I was sure of it, but. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of skip past the first page here because I'll go over everything in the other pages. And please let me know if I'm not scrolling, I'm walking shoot down at the same time. Okay, so for property taxes through third quarter, the city has received almost 1.8 million. Our collections are about 8.3% higher than they were in 2022. And we've received about 56% of the levy so far this year. And that's right where we anticipate being, because we'll receive the second distribution of funds from the county in October, November. So we're right on target there. For real estate excise taxes, we are at 84.6% of budget, $761,000 so far this year. I will say it's a dramatic decrease over last year. It's 61.3% less than last year. And just as a little bit of a comparison, this year there were 15 new home sales, 160 existing home sales, and 4 lot sales through third quarter. As opposed to last year, it's a pretty dramatic decrease. So last year we had 90 new home sales as opposed to 15 this year. We had 297 existing home sales opposed to 160 this year, and 20 lot sales last year as opposed to 4 this year. So definitely have seen a decrease in those revenues. So for our retail sales and use taxes, our total collections for our unrestricted sales tax are right at about 4.5 million or 79.1% of budget. So we're just a little bit above budget so far this year. Comparing categories over 2022, retail came in a little bit less at 3.4% lower. Construction was considerably less at 33%. And again, you can see those numbers also reflected here as well as the REIT revenues. Food services was a little bit higher, 4.7%, and all other categories were up 5.8%. For the HB 1406 collections, we're down just a little bit, 7.2%. We've brought in $28,000. Again, that money goes to Buy Maple Place for low-income rental assistance. We also have our HB 1590 funds. We're at 5.6% below 2022 collections. We brought in a little over $533,000. Again, those funds go to support the construction that we're doing with Skip, as well as our community care coordinator position. And then we also have our new TBD sales tax. We brought in $69,000. That started July 1st. So for our utility taxes, third quarter, we're up about 15.4% over last year. We're at 94.3% of budget. So we've definitely seen some increases in the utility tax side. And then for the general fund, our operating revenues are at 68.7% of budget. And it looks like we're a little bit under when you would normally think we'd be about 75%. Well, there's a couple of things taking place there. First off, our second distribution of property taxes won't come in until fourth quarter. And then we also haven't recognized our second distribution of ARPA funds yet this year. If I take into account, and I can recognize those at any time, we just have always chose to recognize them at year end. But if I recognize those now, we would be at 84% of budget for our revenue side. So we're still doing good on the revenue side. So for total expenditures, excluding transfers out, we're at 11.4 million. Which is an increase in spending of 21.7% over the same period last year. And overall, we've spent 74.4% of the budget. So we're just under that 75%. And there's just a few departments that I'll just kind of point out here that you'll see are higher than where you would think we would be this time of year. The first one being the city council department. And that is only because we have some one-time expenses that hit at the beginning of the year and then they don't occur again. So it's kind of front loaded. And municipal court, we're definitely seeing some increases in those services. Court, public defense, prosecuting attorney. We're seeing some increases, mostly on the court side. And then we've got central services. Again, those are some one-time charges, our insurance payments, things like that that happen at the beginning of the year. And then our special projects department, again, those are some one-time projects and they've already occurred. And so you'll see that just kind of finish up at the end of the year here. And then our operating transfers out, we transfer those funds as they're needed. Some big CIP projects going on right now, so those funds have already been transferred out. For the Public Works Department, we've got streets and swim. So total operating revenues for streets are at 86.8% of budget. That looks a little high, and that's because we have the sales tax revenue that's in there that didn't have a budget because it came after we had already adopted the budget for 2023. If I take that out, they're still at 81.8% of budget. What's bumping them up past that kind of 75% is the interest income that is really had a great year with interest income, so they have a little bump there. For their total expenditures, excluding transfers out, they're at 77.2%. They're a little over their 75%, and some of that is the sidewalk project that had taken place that wasn't in the budget, and that'll be coming through on a budget amendment. And then we have the swim fund, and total operating revenues are at 108%. And the reason that is so high is because we have that BPA past due collection that came in early in the year. It was like almost $800,000. And again, interest earnings, they've really taken off there too. So for development services, they are at 71.9% of budget. And just digging into this one a little bit more, I removed the school impact fee because we had budgeted to receive revenue for the school impact fee and then pass that on, not knowing at the time that they were going to have a zero impact fee. So if I take that out, they're actually at 83% of their budget. So a little bit higher than where we would anticipate them being this time of year. And they're under on their expenditures. So their total operating expenditures came in at 47.8%. Again, if I take out the school impact fees, because they're on the expense side too, since we pass those on to the school district, they're still at 53%. So still under where we'd expect them this time of year. Aquatics, recreation, cultural arts. So for third quarter, the aquatics revenue was at 120% of budget. And the recreation and cultural arts was at 70.5% of budget. And the expenditures for aquatics are a little bit higher at 81.7%. Which we would expect as we receive more program revenue, then they're going to be adding more hours, more program hours. And so we see that fluctuate. And then the recreation and cultural arts is at 75.9% of budget. And just a couple of kind of fun numbers to throw out there. The year-to-date splash counts for 2023, they're a little over 100,394 versus the same time in 2022, they were at 65,800. So massive increase. And then for recreation, 2023, they had 1,833 participants so far versus 1,400 for last year. And athletics, they were a little over 2,000 this year versus 1,660 last year. So increases in all areas. All right, so for cash and investments, we currently have a little over $42 million in cash and investments. It's an increase of over $3 million from 2022 with the CIP fund, the swim fund, and the equipment replacement fund being our largest gainers. The local government investment pool earned 2.56% in third quarter. And just to put that in terms of dollars, what that means to us, it seems like a small percentage, but we've brought in almost $1 million in interest income through third quarter. So definitely turns into some real money there. Investments outside of the LGIP total just a little over 3 million. And then for our capital investment program. So far this year, we've collected a little over 567,000 in GMA mitigation fees, which in turn we use on our transportation projects, and $90,000 in park fee in lieu and park impact fees. And I've updated this chart below here and added more of our current projects. So I won't go through them all, but that looks a little bit differently than past quarters, just updated that a little bit. And then for our bond watch, nothing has changed since last quarter. Our next principal payment wasn't due until, excuse me, November 1st. And then our total impact fee balance, which we accrue those impact fees and keep them kind of in a little pot of money and disperse them to those transportation projects as they're needed. And we have a little over $1.8 million currently. And then just to go over the interfund loans that we currently have, we have 2 interfund loans. One that's approved for CIP 1201, which is the 204th project, and CIP 1127, which is the 272nd project. And we've currently transferred 4.1 million to that project to help until the grant proceeds come back in. And then we have CIP 1019, which is Founders Park, and we've transferred just a little over 326,000 for that project. And that is all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Casey. Does anybody have any questions? No, thank you very much. Very in-depth report, and I enjoy hearing it, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is new business item number 3. Present the results of the 2023 salary survey. Noreen, welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Wagner and council. Well, a few weeks ago, you went over the results for the council. Now you can look at the results for the city staff. We did what we did in other annual 5-year reviews, and we reviewed all the employees. But this year, we also added the width of the salary ranges plus the percent of the steps. And that is probably what had the most impact, because that had not been reviewed for probably 15 years. And the reason why it wasn't reviewed was there didn't seem to be a need for it, but I think in the last 5 years, excuse me, there has been a significant change, and particularly I am speculating with regard to COVID and the recruiting difficulties and the desire to have an easier time recruiting people and then retain staff that cities have. Plus the addition of changing the comparable pool. So we are not trying with the steps and the width of the salary ranges. We're not trying to exceed the market. We're trying to get closer to meeting it. The average steps were 4.5%. We're recommending 4%. And the width of the ranges was just over 28%. And we're recommending raising it from 19% to 26, just over 26%. There were 26 positions that needed to be put into higher ranges even after adjusting the steps, and 38 positions that will remain the same. And 4 positions, even though an increase was recommended, increasing the width of the ranges and the steps will take care of that. The impact is significant because now that we change the steps, none of the employees fall on a step. So they're between steps, and so you have to put them on a step. So we have to put them on the closest step that they fall. And then people who were topped out, employees who were topped out will now, because of the wider range, be receiving an increase, a step increase. So in order to catch up with the comparable market, it will be a more significant hit this time around. Does anybody have any questions?
Does council have any questions for Noreen? Beth?
In looking at the salaries, were you also able to compare additional benefits that each city offered and how that relates to a total compensation package?
Yeah, that is separate. We kept that separate. Next year we'll be reviewing that. For the most part, it will probably, don't quote me necessarily on this, but it'll probably be very similar because a lot of the cities go with the Association of Washington Cities. And so you have this choice of the same benefits packages. So that usually is not going to vary very much.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? So you're looking for direction from us on consensus to move forward with the recommendations that you have here that are being brought to us, correct?
Correct.
So is there consensus going off of this salary survey study? This council, is there, can I get a thumbs up if we want to move forward with this? Okay. So move forward because this is in the budget presentation that you presented to us. So this will be brought back to us in December 12th, included in the budget. Okay. You need anything else, Noreen?
Nothing else. Thank you very much.
And thank you for going through all this and getting this and bringing this back to us and making it very easy to understand. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is new business item number 4. Consider ordinance amending chapter 3.70 of the Covington Municipal Code, enacting an excise tax on business activities of public and private water and sewer utilities. Casey.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. So during the 2024 budget workshop that we held at the end of October, staff identified the levying of an excise tax or utility tax on the public and private water and sewer utilities of the city. It's kind of one option that we could use to address our ongoing financial and budgetary concerns. So at the direction of council, we've prepared the attached ordinance, which would add the water and sewer businesses to the list of providers already taxed by the city. And you guys had requested to see what it would look like for the 6% and the 8%. So I've listed those numbers for you below. And just also to let you know that we did receive an estimate from the water district. So that is a new number for you. For the water for 6%, we would anticipate it would bring in $213,000. For the 8%, we would assume it would bring in $284,000. And then for sewer, it would bring in $299,000 at the 6% and $399,000 at the 8%. And again, those are based on the estimates provided by both districts. So like I mentioned before, the city currently collects utility taxes on electricity, natural gas, telephones, cell phones, solid waste, cable, and storm drainage. And I have a table listed there in your packet that shows the different percentages we have. They range between 6 and 8%. For electricity, telephones, and cell phones, we're statutorily required to have a maximum rate of no more than 6% unless it's voter approved. Cable tax rates are not set by statute, but the code dictates that we should not be unduly discriminatory and suggests it shouldn't exceed our other rates. For sewer, water, solid waste, and stormwater, we have no limit under state or federal law on what we can set. And just as a reminder, utility taxes are imposed upon the utility business themselves and not upon the individual utility customer. Generally, most businesses pass that tax on to the customer to recoup the cost. And I've got some costs here that would show you how that would affect a customer. So for the water and sewer, they charge on a bi-monthly basis. This would equate to, for the water, excuse me, at about $1.40 per month for the 6% tax, $1.86 for the 8% tax. And for the sewer, if we equate it to a monthly charge, it would be $1.38 per month for the 6% tax and $1.84 for the 8% tax. This is just on their base, the base rate. This does not include any consumption. So any consumption that they would have would add to the cost of their bill. And we don't have, commercial accounts are a little bit more difficult to estimate how much that would affect them. It is included in the estimates the district gave me, but as far as coming up with an estimate to give a commercial customer, that would be a little bit more difficult for me to give. And then below, we've got a list of just some of the utility tax rates in the area. They range mostly from 6 up to 13%. Issaquah kind of being an anomaly at a low rate of 3%, and Kent being on the higher end at the 13% for the water. And that's all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
Does council have any questions, Debbie?
Thank you. Were we not able to get Maple Valley's tax rates?
Does Maple Valley have?
I don't think they've got tax rate
Well,
on
maybe
water.
they don't.
it's zero.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they haven't,
Like we are currently.
they haven't
Okay.
brought it forward yet.
Okay, and I know Black Diamond is getting ready to do one as well. They've sent a letter to the water district for 6%, I believe.
I don't know that they decided.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, so what we had, and thank you, Casey. So council, what we have before us is an ordinance, potential ordinance to amend chapter 3.70 of the Covington Municipal Code, authorizing a percent excise tax on business activities of all public and private water and sewer. So first, what we need to decide and have a discussion is if we wish to do this utility tax, at what percentage we want, and then we can pass this ordinance if we wish to do that. So, Beth.
Could I ask one? follow-up
Yes.
question? So Casey, just to clarify, because you mentioned it, the tax rate is the base rate, and then of course, consumption is separate. Is the consumption estimate included in the 512,000 or the 683, depending on whether it's 6 or 8%, or is that just on the base amount? Okay, thanks.
And I also have a
Yes, please. Because this is not included in the budget revenues at this time.
I will say that the forecast I have prepared has the salary certainly, because I was prepared for that.
Yeah.
That is it. And then I have made some assumptions of my own with averaging. So what I currently have in here is the business occupational tax that we've been discussing. And then as well as I currently have this loaded with an 8%, but I can lower it back down to the 6%. So what this looks like with the B&O in here for a partial year in 2024, then a full year in 2025, and then the water and sewer utility tax, we have an effective date of February 1st. So I have 11 months in 2024 and 12 months in 2025, just so you know.
Where does that show on the?
I will show you. right
Okay.
here. I think you can only see part of my screen here.
Yeah, all we're seeing is, says miscellaneous.
I don't think I can share. I'm gonna do the screen. That'll show the split screen. There we go. Okay, so I will show you where I have it here. So this budget strategies line right here, this 1,376,000 for 2024 is made up of the partial year of B&O and an 8% water utility tax and an 8% sewer utility tax. Again, only for 11 months for 2024. So those are the revenues that we anticipate bringing in based on those new revenue sources. And I also have it loaded with what the salary survey is, as well as you can think of it, anything that happens in the street fund needs to be paid for by the general funds. So their increase for the salary study have also increased the transfer out. And I can show you what that looks like. So in 2025, we are not deficit spending. 2026, we are not deficit spending. We begin deficit spending in 2027, 369,000, 790,000 in 2028, and 1.2 million in 2029. Our reserve balances are still looking healthy, but we're dipping into them. So you can see we're still above. This is where, this is our target. This is how much we're above the target, 2.7 million, but it's decreasing. So you can see it goes from 5 million to 4.5 to 2.7. And that's again with the B&O and the 8% water and sewer. The other thing I'll mention, and I think this is something that we'll probably be talking about at the council summit, but I'll just mention this, that the street fund is really one of our places that's a problem for the general fund because this 856,000, 940,000, 1,029,000, those are all the transfers out to the street fund. If we were able to fix the street fund, the general fund would be whole. That's just a site. That's just me pushing it prior to the sun. But that's kind of what it looks like. Again, I'm happy to put in the 6%, play with it however you'd like.
Debbie,
Could we look at what it would look like if we did 6%?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I will get you focused in on this line right here while I change it. So for 2024. That's the 6%. You can see we dipped into deficit spending 1 year earlier in 2026. And then just,
Beth,
And what was the B&O rate that you used when you put that in? Was it the full amount that we could get or?
this is just what we have anticipated we've used our retail sales. Oh, what percentage is the 0.2?
It's the point.
Yeah, it's the 0.2.
anybody else have a question? Okay, does council wish to move, first off, does council wish to move forward on doing a utility tax on water and sewer? Is there a thumbs up to do that? Okay, now the next question is at what percentage? We can take them separately if you wish, or we can do them both together. So let's look at doing them both together at the same. Does council wish to do it at 8%? Or would you rather do it at 6%?
I'd rather do 6, but we need to do 8.
Yeah.
I agree. I came in wanting, having it in my mind justified that I could sleep at night with doing a 6%, but
Okay.
that doesn't help us with the bottom line.
Okay.
So
I mean, it might buy us some more time.
Okay, let me go down the line. Beth, what would you prefer to go at?
I would prefer 6.
Okay, Sean, 8. Oops, let me write this. Debbie,
I prefer 6.
Jennifer,
We need to do 8.
okay, Joe.
0.
I would prefer 6, but I'm gonna go with 8 because we need to do our due diligence. So we have a 3-2-1. So let's move forward at 8%. So I would look for a motion to pass an ordinance amending chapter 3.70 Covington Municipal Code authorizing an 8% excise tax on business activities of all public and private water and sewer utilities.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Sean, would you like to speak to your motion?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your second?
Sure. These conversations are never easy, and I know I've said this up here before, but that's why we're here. That's why we're elected. That's why we have to make these decisions. We have a very huge responsibility ensuring the financial health of the city as an organization and protecting it and protecting that reserve fund. That is a much bigger deal than a couple dollars, even though, yes, it's money to our residents. We have a much bigger responsibility to the city as a whole.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? Beth?
I understand the need for additional funding and we know that we need to do something. If we move forward with a B&O and we raise the property tax and we're raising the utility taxes all in the same year, that could be a bit hard for people to take in all at once. And again, I feel like there's an opportunity if we start with some incremental changes, we can revisit it in the next year or two, because we do have a few more years before we start going into that negative. we may see more retail sales come up. If Lake Point comes online, we may see additional revenue sources coming in that we can't really foresee right now based on the information that we have. So I would prefer to go with something a little bit gentler this time around. And then we can look at it again as we do every year.
So you're against the
I'm
motion?
against the motion.
Okay. That's what I- okay. Anybody else? Joe?
So I guess it's no secret, I'm against the motion since I said 0% is where I'd like to see this. And I say that for simple things. Yes, it's, well, I first think the numbers are wrong for the bi-monthly residential base rate, because in the 14 years I've owned my home, the lowest I've ever paid in a bi-monthly cycle was $86, and I pay $100 now. So
that includes consumption, what you're paying.
still double what that is. And when we're considering raising taxes right now, which I think I hold the record of voting for maybe one or two, voting in favor of two, maybe three sales tax increases or tax increases in my time on this council. Things cost just too much right now. We go to the grocery store, $200 used to buy you two weeks worth of groceries. $200 buys you 4 days worth of groceries now. We go to the gas is still crazy expensive. Everything is costing too much, and now we're asking our residents to pay for more. Yes, we have a responsibility to making sure our city is financially sound, financially stable, and we're able to provide the programs that we said we need to provide. But we're dipping into the well. Seems we're going to be asking to dip into the well for taxes a lot in the next few months, or next few weeks, maybe the next few minutes. And I just can't vote yes on this one.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Anybody else wish to speak for or against the motion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to pass an ordinance amending chapter 3.70 Covington Municipal Code, authorizing an 8% excise tax on business activities, all public and private water and sewer utilities. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, all those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so it's 4-2 to approve it at an 8%. Thank you. Next up is consider a resolution to update the city's fee schedule for 2024. Kelly. Long time no see. Welcome.
I know. Good evening. Okay, so tonight before you, we have the proposed 2024 fee resolution for your consideration. And I know I kind of give you the same spiel every year, but I'll do it again. So we've continued to build on the fee study that we conducted in 2009. And that was an extensive undertaking by staff where we tracked our time on every permit type to ensure that our fees are covering staff time. That's for the administration, the review, the inspection of permits and those processes. Essentially, we want to make sure that development is paying for development. Every year, I brought this just as an example. This is my 2023 fee resolution. And every year, as things come up over the course of the year, I make notes, we make updates, we analyze, we collaborate and talk about different fees as they come up over the course of the year so that we can make those appropriate adjustments when it's time to take a look at it again. This year, the CPI is 4.6%. That's been applied to the fee table, and specifically adjusted fees have been noted in your blue sheet. Specifically, traffic concurrency, tree removal fees, and engineering review fees have been adjusted to reflect the more accurate cost of partnering with consultants for the administration, review, and inspection of those services. And some of those are a bigger jump this year, but what we are finding is that when we're partnering with consultants, we've got to cover those costs, and those do get passed through to our developers. We have added a few new fees to account for a minor amendment to a development agreement, a phase notice to proceed, and wildlife urban interface reviews. These are created out of necessity and driven by the industry. The phase notice to proceed is a tool to allow for greater flexibility to the developer and get them breaking ground sooner. This has really been something that developers are wanting to take advantage of. But we're finding that the extra work created by allowing that phase notice to proceed, we need to offset that. So that fee is reflected as well. I'm happy to go into greater detail on any of the fees if there are any questions. I'll stop.
Thank you, Kelly. Does council have any questions? No? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I had one in that, under residential. I believe it's the traffic review fee table.
Mhm.
For assisted living facilities, it's kind of hard because I can't necessarily see where they're at now and where they were, but it appears that for assisted living facilities, it's $15 for a bed as far as the traffic concurrency fee to be paid, because residents don't drive. Caregivers are employed, but caregivers have to get there anyway, and it may not be one-to-one, but is that assuming that one caregiver might help 4 residents? And that's why they're only gonna have one car for 4 people that live there, or?
And so the fee that you're looking at there is it's the calculation for the application to run the transportation concurrency. It is not the actual impact fee
Okay,
that gets
thanks.
assessed.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I know these are a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. And I'll just quickly note, the blue sheet is also noted, the attachment regarding SB 5290 requiring consolidated permit processing and review timelines to be established by January 1st, 2025. That's an endeavor that staff will be working on this year as well to consolidate, create efficiencies, and work to continue to improve our processing timelines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So council, before us is a proposed resolution to adopt the 2024 fee schedule as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Beth, would you like to speak to your motion?
I mean, to echo what Kelly said, and the theme of development paying for development and making sure that we're getting compensated and our staff is getting, the city's getting compensated for staff time to make these changes to our city is important, and it's important to keep that on the cost.
Thank you, Beth.
Mhm.
Debbie, would you like to speak to your second?
Thank you. I agree with the way Beth phrased it. We need to cover our costs, and you've done a good job to capture all of that.
Thank you, Debbie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion? All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed resolution adopting the 2024 fee schedule as presented. All those in favor state aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Next up is new business item number 6, discuss Equity, Cultural and Social Justice Commission recommendation to join the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Welcome.
Hi. Good evening, council. My name is Daphne Hernandez. I'm the associate planner for the city of Covington. I'm also the staff liaison for the Equity, Cultural, Social Justice Commission, mouthful. I am here tonight to present the recommendation by the Equity Commission to join the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, also referred by GARE. I will be going over some key points outlined in my memo that was provided to the council. More detailed information can be found on page 108 of your agenda packet. Just waiting for. As mentioned earlier, the Equity Commission or ECSJ Commission is making a recommendation tonight to City Council to join GARE, the Government Alliance on Race Equity. It's a national membership network that fosters critical connections among racial equity practitioners who work in local, state, and regional governments. GARE works to advance a more racial, just, and equitable society that benefits everyone. Practitioners develop and share skills, lessons, and approaches to strengthen racial equitable policies, practices, and cultural strategies within our their members' jurisdictions. GARE is working to advance racial equity in over 150 local jurisdictions in 30 states. GARE's approach is fostered in 4 key items listed in front of you that work hand in hand. Them being visualize, organize, operationalize, and normalize. I think I said all of them. Leadership, community, and staff must normalize racial equity as a key and value and have clear understanding and shared definitions. Operationalize equity via new policies and by transforming the underlying culture of each organization. And finally, organize both internally and its partnership with other institutions and the community. So that is GARE's main approach. Again, more information is found in your memo. That really goes into detail about their approach. Something to know as I mentioned, there are 150 local jurisdictions that are part of the GARE membership. I have taken a screenshot of all the people that are part of it, include city, counties, jobs, different agencies that are part of that. I have zoomed in at the surrounding jurisdictions. Again, in your agenda packet, I have highlighted some of the surrounding jurisdictions that are part of GARE. In researching GARE membership, I did reach out to a couple of cities. 2 of them responded back. The city of Kent is a GARE member. They have used the GARE membership as a resource guide. They do have a racial equity manager that oversees this GARE membership. They use GARE through their strategic plans. They have infused the GARE theory of change to organize the city's approach to their work. They have citywide required training done specifically through GARE, and they also have an equity speaker series that provides a space for employees to learn about topics that may be considered a difficult conversation. The other city that also responded was Mercer Island. They do not have an equity manager, but their membership is currently managed by their city manager's office. They use their membership as resource designed to outline for making changes in their HR practices and how to utilize GARE resources within their staff. So out of the ones that I reached out, those are the ones that provided me some feedback on their membership. For tonight's recommendation by the ECSJ Commission, as outlined in your agenda packet, there is a fiscal impact of $1,000 membership a year. If you were to join member or Covington join GARE membership, that would be one of the things that you guys could do. Or an alternative is seek out existing equity trainings. That is all for my
Can I maybe speak to that a little bit? Yeah, sorry. If you want to go back to that slide. So I just, Daphne's correct that those are the various alternatives. I know in there it says like ask staff for more or join GARE, but after this went out, we had more conversation about this. So one, I commend the Equity Commission for continued highlighting the need for equity training. And kind of the next step for the council tonight is to provide direction on whether to add GARE membership in its budget in 2024. So here the options that we can also consider is obviously subscribe to GARE and allocate staff time to specifically overseeing that program and that membership to ensure that it's utilized within the city. An alternative option as well, and Daphne started to touch upon was, there is this opportunity to also leverage existing training programs and tools that are currently offered through AWC, WCIA, MRSC, kind of our regional memberships that we already pay into that provide that level of training. However, if that was the choice for council, that secondary alternative, there is some nominal costs that are associated with kind of higher advanced levels of training, workshop level training, citywide trainings. And I think we talked about that could be allocated out of our central services budget just to ensure that that was a citywide implementation. I think either one of these options are a proactive and flexible approach. I just also want to point out that both of these options also support the work that the Planning Commission is doing in the equity. So if you remember, we had the equity metric conversation where we defined what equity is, and then we're creating metrics to bring forward, into how we look at policy and comprehensive plan updates. And so, all of this stuff is kind of really dovetailing together, and kind of accumulating here by the end of 2024.
Thank you, Selena.
And I do just want to point out that we have a Commissioner Chuck here. If there's any questions, he did attend a presentation for upcoming members that you might be able to ask specific questions because he was there for that.
Does council have any questions for Daphne or Selena on this?
Mayor,
Sean,
I apologize. Can I mention one other item that council may not be aware of because it's pretty recent? We're part of the Well City program through AWC, and a new requirement to meet that Well City, to achieve the Well City Award, is to have an equity element in the activities that you do in the organization. So Julie has been assigned to run that and is starting that. She recently sent out some training, virtual training for all staff, and we'll be doing additional things as well. And the so that's something else that is happening already for council to know.
okay, thanks, Regan. Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Daphne, I appreciate it and excited to see the opportunities here. I had a couple of questions just for clarity. The EC, like the Equity Commission is recommending that we join.
Correct.
Okay. And then one of the things I've realized, there are expectations in joining that the city will adopt or work toward. And I guess I had a question about, and I appreciate staff mentioning that we're working towards some of these goals already. Are they, what we're doing, congruent with what Dare would like us to do as well?
I would say from the research that I've done, and I know Chuck can chime in. I know Covington is doing some of the work. I know with the portal that is provided for members, it really dives in. They do yearly summits that kind of talk about what each city, company, everyone is doing, and really try to keep each other accountable. So I would say yes, Covington is doing that, not to the extent that GARE is, because it is such a big organization. As I mentioned, 150 partners, which is a lot.
Okay.
And I did have opportunities to go to one of their monthly introductory for both new members interested. And
If you're going to speak, do you mind putting the mic so we can?
And I was gonna go to the next, but that's fine.
as I was saying, I did have an opportunity to speak with representatives from the city of Austin, Texas, who were just so happy to be able to participate with other planning commissions and get new ideas. It's a resource that is more than anything else, gives you opportunity to pick and choose programs, but also to brainstorm with people all around the country who have similar and worse issues to have to deal with on a regular basis. They run a number of different circuits, different meetings, and you participate in those that you want to. They also do have online training, which you get at discounts as being members, and they are specifically done for CARE members. So, and I believe some of you have had some exposure to them. They do a great job as far as I can tell.
Thank you, Chuck. Beth?
Well, I was going to ask because there was a mention there about potential for grant opportunities for GARE members, and do we have a note? Did they give any statistics on like how challenging will that be to get, especially in a community like Covington where we are at this point statistically we're not like Kent where they have they're
Well,
very diverse community percentage wise. Does that matter?
No, it doesn't really matter because
Okay.
we're planning on expanding
Right,
our
sure.
relationships and
Mhm.
growing our community.
Mhm,
We're
mhm.
gonna have to deal with those things, not
Mhm.
only as we internally grow, but as we grow with the state,
Mhm.
because the state has those recognition of those issues as well. We can be a leader in that by joining GARE, or we can follow.
I might add though, yes, I think it does have an impact because those larger cities like in Austin, Texas
Mhm.
or Kent, Washington have a lot more resources to apply for
Mhm.
the grants.
Correct.
And so they've got dedicated staff doing that, which we don't currently have.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sean?
Done?
And direct these to staff, please.
So that just triggered another question. So how would we staff this? And how big an impact on, so I know the $1,000 that's in here, but obviously this will take staff time. So I'm just curious.
It will take staff time, and I think as we've talked about it, if we took a very passive approach to this, which would mean we subscribed, became members, and when we're able to pull some information from it or some training, we would do that. That's maybe, 80 to 100 hours a year staff time. If we wanted to be an active participant, like some of the comments that were made tonight, I think it would require a part-time staff person like the other cities are doing.
Do we currently have staff to handle the 80 to 100 if we have to?
That's a squeeze.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I add?
Right. And Selena made a good comment, and the expertise to run this program. That's something we don't know if we have at this point.
Okay, Sean?
Sorry. So one of the things that came up, I appreciate that. And so in the blue sheet, it talks about responsibilities, member responsibilities, and perhaps I'm not understanding or misunderstanding. But it seems to me from reading these responsibilities, there's an expectation that it isn't a passive type membership, that it actually is an active membership. Talks about things you will do. You will implement racial equity tools. You will operate with urgency and accountability. I'm not saying I'm opposed to that, but I want some clarity on that. I just heard that we can pick and choose, but I want to make sure if we're going into this, GARE is not going to later say, look, this isn't at all what we thought you were.
There, as I understand it, the first couple of years that you're going to be active there, you're not going to be running programs. You're not going to be doing that, but you're going to be pulling information from them. They're a resource that really can impact what goes on. I think as time goes on, the decisions will be made whether or not you want to have a more active role. I don't think you need it initially. I think the planning commission needs to have an active role initially because we've got a very big development coming down the road and their insights. So you probably have somebody on the planning side active in those meetings, but that doesn't mean we're committing to implement anything. It's still our decision to make as time goes on.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck.
I just.
Okay, you can.
Oh, sorry, I'll let someone else know.
Joe.
So if I heard right from staff, AWC and our insurance group, way too many initials that we have with all these different groups, are already implementing a lot of these things that GARE is implementing. if that's the case, when we're already paying AWC and the insurance group a lot more than $1,000, what is give me a benefits to adding another group? What can someone on staff give me those benefits? Because we already are saying we're gonna be thin at the 80 to 100 hours, having a staff. He said, Regan said 100. Yeah, what it says here is 40 to 80. Regan said 80 to 100. So I'll go on the high side. Give me the 80. We already are thin at 80 hours of having a staff member be passive at this. Reading through some of these things, like Sean said, it might be way more active than the passiveness that we want, or we're thinking. What's the benefits of adding another?
So that's the benefit. You just said it. It's a lot more intensive of a program. So we're really just kind of getting into this. If council recalls, a couple of years ago, we did a mandatory implicit bias training virtually, and that was a free program we did. AWC has those programs and now implement it as an aspect of the Well City. So Julie's starting to develop that right now. And with these other regional agencies, it's a passive approach where when we're able to do some things we've talked about a couple times a year kind of thing, that we would bring those on. GARE is a much more all-inclusive type program. So it's going to provide a lot more than like an AWC is going to provide.
I know, I just find it hard that we already have all these extra things that we can do. I'm not against getting more information. I'm not against us having access to more things. I think the more you have, the better. You know, it's the old G.I. Joe saying, the more now you know, or man, all that stuff. But it's just one of those, what if we're already getting it from one group, do we need to get it from another? And that's just the you know, gotta weigh the scales there. So
thank you, Joe. Jennifer.
The advantage is that this is their specialty and we're getting it from people that actually know what they're doing instead of throwing it together so a city can check a box. I'm not going to say that this is going to fix a check a box situation, but I definitely see the advantage of checking this organization out. And for $1,000, if Julie can dip in there and grab some resources pretty easily to help, you know, with the Well City situation, that's great too. Again, we're checking boxes, but we can go more into checking boxes. And that's what we should be doing. And our Equity Commission is proposing and recommending it to us. And that's the whole point of the commission, not to sit here and pick it apart. It's to absorb and ask questions. And I think it's well worth $1,000 to check it out, take a passive approach and see what's there and what's available and whether we want to continue.
Thank you, Jennifer. Debbie?
Is it appropriate to make a comment, not necessarily a question, but just, so I read this as there is potentially a lot more cost than the $1,000. That's just the initiation fee or the membership fee. It's the list of the requirements that we would put on the back of the city staff to make sure that we can implement. So it's, you know, as I read through this today, I felt that this could potentially be a burden on the staff, and I questioned the number of hours that were allotted to be, I think it was 20 to 80, and I do believe it would be much greater than that because someone has to oversee it for us to really get in and be part of it. I mean, it made some requirements around technology that we're going to be part of the field of practice. So we need to co-create new tools and not just take from the network portal, but to be participators in providing content. So I see that as having kind of an IT hat, which I know comes with the cost. I don't think that we really could predict today how many hours a year it could take. It has the potential to have kind of a scope creep. The more we get into it, the more it's going to take. This is my belief. The more we get into the program, the more we're going to find it's going to take someone to make sure that we're looking at the data, using the data, subscribing to the protocols, giving content. So I'm just a little bit nervous about what this does for staff cost. When I say burden, I don't mean that it's just work, but it's work at a cost. So I feel that it's more than $1,000. So I think we need to be just mindful of that.
Thank you, Debbie. Anybody else? Beth?
I mean, I agree with everything that Debbie said, because it does sound like we're hearing two different things. Like, it would be nice to dip our toes in for $1,000. It's not a lot for a year to see, but if they're going to start piling more stuff on our plate, that's going to task our, and we already know we're working with a budget consideration here too, and there are tools out there. I always like to explore, so I would be fine trying it for a year, but if they start demanding things that we are not at that level, we don't have the resources to commit to. If we have that opportunity to withdraw, then at least we can say we tried it, we looked, we saw what was available, and then maybe at another time when we have the opportunity to do it. Because everything that Debbie said is, I think, something that we are gonna have to be dealing with at some point, figuring out how to pay for it.
And I apologize, I don't recall this, Stephanie, is it just a 1-year subscription, then a renewal each year, or is it a multi-year?
Yeah,
It's just a
multi-year.
one year, so.
Sean?
Just to conclude, I agree with Jennifer. Some come forward from our commission, they're recommending it. Beth's comment that we can see how it goes, and I would assume we can be in conversation with Gare about our experience, and they're looking for that type of feedback on how the program works on the ground here in Covington. I guess the thing I would mention also, and we'd want to communicate with them, many of the other cities we'd be in partnership with are much older than Covington. One of the things I think that would impact that is, yes, I understand that systems are built over time and they do have biases built into them, but we're a very relatively young city of only 25 years old, and many of the systems are outside of our control. And we're not the only ones with that. So I could see where there would be significant or more complex issues of larger cities like Kent or Seattle, for that matter, where Covington's fairly new and maybe we haven't adopted the similar impact. So just communicating our unique experience and how best we can use these tools. But yeah, I'm gonna support joining as well.
Okay. Anybody else? Chuck, you can sit down.
I
Thank you.
just wanted to add,
We're in a discussion. Thanks. I have a question, Regan. On here on the blue sheet, it says action items if approved. If this were to be approved by council tonight, do you need these answered tonight?
No, I wouldn't think we'd need those answered tonight. That's something we can bring back later.
Okay. All right. So council, before us is a proposed recommendation to brought to us by the Equity, Cultural and Social Justice Commission to join the Government Alliance on Race Equities. Does council wish to take action and make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the proposed recommendation to join the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. Sean, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I've mentioned quite a bit already. I second what Jennifer said. The membership fee is relatively small, and I recognize that there will be additional costs in there. But this is in part why we formed the commission in the first place, is to move us toward a more equitable, welcoming, just society. And if this organization can help us move in that direction, I think we should take the year to see what we can gain from it, and come back next year and see where we are. So I'm going to vote for it.
Thank you, Sean. Jennifer, would you like to speak to your second?
Yeah, I was going to say almost as exact words about the reason forming the commission. And I will say this is probably the first recommendation they brought to us. Not that we just rubber stamp anything that comes to our commissions, but having been on a couple commissions, I know about the work involved in the diligence and the passion behind these recommendations. And to me, this is an easy one to try out. If it does suck us in, then we just say, you know what, no, thank you. Or we can't commit to that, but also we really should consider committing to it, even if there is a cost. That's the whole point, the entire point. We are supposed to be for all. You guys hear me say that? I truly mean it, for everybody, all, not just the 6 of us sitting up here. So I fully support the motion.
Okay, is there anybody else wish to speak for or against it? Joe?
The cost, the startup cost, I have no problem with $1,000. That's might be one of the cheapest things we pay for unless it's something at Staples. So I think that I have no problem with. I just have this fear of the unknown of, hey, you guys signed up, great, here's these conferences you are required to attend, and they are $6,000 a piece, and you have to send 4 people. Stuff like that. That's things I'm worried about, is when we have to start adding those budget amendments in, because we're winding up, you gotta go to these 4 conferences, you gotta send 4 people, and they're $6 grand per person. Or maybe less, maybe more, who knows? It's those unknowns that make me stop for a second and ask. Do I think us being able to grab those pieces of information that are in there and implementing them here, or seeing what works here, changing them to make them work for our locale, I think that's great. But I just think I appreciate the commission bringing us these ideas, these recommendations. I know that we ask for their recommendations, and sometimes we disagree with their recommendations. I voted no on a couple of things lately that have been recommended to us by commissions. But I'm just worried about those unknowns on this. And I really wish we had how much those unknowns cost. Yes, for a year, we're fine. $1,000, that's great. Maybe we are passive. I do worry about what we're taking a staff member away from, whether it's permitting or code enforcement or whatever it could be, to fund those, to use that 80 hours. So I do wonder what we're going to be taking them away from to do that. So for $1,000, that's all it's going to cost us this first year. It's great. I'm for it. If it's going to wind up costing us 10, 20, 30 times that, we might have to really rethink it, because we just had to raise taxes to stop a budget shortfall. So I want to be super cautious with everything we start putting into the budget right now.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against the motion?
Go ahead.
Debbie?
I will just say, I would prefer that we try getting the information we need and utilizing that within the city from the resources that we already pay for, the professional organizations, AWC, and what the others, and I do appreciate the work that the commission does, and so I'm trying not to just turn a blind eye to the information that you provided to us. It's all about that. I believe that we've got the information and programs available to us through another group that we're already paying for, and not wanting to put an unknown number of hours onto the city with the city staff that we pay for on top of that. So that's
okay. Thank you, Debbie. Beth?
It's kind of a recap with what everybody has said, but again, appreciate what the commission does, the work that they've done in the recommendation. It's another set of stakeholders to have somebody implement it. So we've got to look at all of it, and I'm fine trying it out for the year, but I would, because we may actually glean some information for that $1,000 that's different than what we already get. But if they start tacking things on that we don't have the bandwidth right now to take care of, then I think we should have that option of bowing out or letting our 1-year membership run out and then reevaluating it. Always about trying things and reevaluating.
Thank you. I just have one quick question. It's a 1-year membership, correct? And it's not required to be renewed if we want to try it out.
Right.
Okay. All right. Anybody else wish to speak for or against the motion? Been moved and seconded to approve the proposed recommendation to join the Government Alliance on race and equity. All those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. It passes. And then you'll have to, and as follow-up, Regan will need to bring back to council at some time the action items that are needed with this approval. I'll leave that up to staff on when to bring that back.
I'm just looking at those items. A lot of those are kind of internal things that we would decide, but if council wants us to bring that to a council meeting, we can do that.
No, if it can be done internally, there's no reason to bring it to council.
Okay.
All right. Next up is new business item number 7, discuss creation of a salary commission. Mark.
Good evening, Mayor Wagner and City Council. Mark Orthman, the City Attorney. And as you'll recall, last month on October 24th, Council requested staff to bring back an agenda item to discuss the creation of a salary commission. And that's what I'm here tonight to discuss. So under state law, Council may choose to establish a salary commission and delegate that authority to a group of other individuals. And that removes council from the participating in any increases or decreases to their salaries. And it's a very simple ordinance that would establish a salary commission, and it would said that it would make it so salaries would go into effect immediately, decreases would go into effect at the end of a position's term. Council has no further say in anything with salaries once the commission sets them. It's final. The ordinance delegates all the authority of the commission to set salaries for council members, and salary commissioners are appointed by the mayor, subject to council approval. Salary commissioners can't be people like city staff, immediate family members, officials, has to be someone that's entirely removed from the city. And all the commission changes to salary are not subject to referendum because Covington has not adopted those powers. There are a couple other requirements for commissioners, and they can only be removed for incapacity, incompetence, neglect of duty, malfeasance, or disqualifying change of residence. But it's a pretty straightforward process, and I'm looking for direction to see if council would like the city to return with an ordinance proposing to establish a salary commission. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Beth.
So, Mark, in the RCW that's presented on this blue sheet, it mentions that the salary commissions are appointed by the mayor subject to council approval. All of our other commissions are appointed jointly by council. Is that something that can be changed?
No, that's set by state law.
And is there any opportunity for us to further refine the pool of people that can be appointed, such as people not serving on another commission?
That's a good question, because the members of the commissions are appointed specifically in this subsection. So I think so long as it didn't conflict with these terms that are set forth in 3521.015, there likely could be additional restrictions placed upon who could hold a commission office. But I need to look into that a little bit more, and I haven't put any thought into that until right now.
I would state that since it says cannot be city staff or officials, a commissioner would be considered under that.
That's correct. Thank you, Mayor Wagner.
Yep. Sean.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate this. It's interesting. So how and when would the commission meet? Who initiates that? Who calls them into order? And how often? I'm just curious about how that process would go forward.
That's a good question, but I believe it would be council itself that would bring the salary commission. But I'd have to look into that a little bit further, because I'm not sure who actually brings them, because it's not a standing commission. They are only come together when it's time to make a decision on council salaries, which I believe would be through council action.
And would they then disband after they were done? And would we have to reestablish a new commission every time?
No, what they would do is they serve no more than 2 terms in office.
Okay.
And once they've served those 2 terms, they are out. So if you set a 2-year term for an individual and they serve 2 of those terms, they would be holding the office for the entire 4 years. But they would only be doing the work of the salary commission when they are asked to do it. So they're not like constantly reevaluating stat councils and the council and the mayor's salaries. They're just doing it when called upon. So if there was no standing salary commission that had been set, then council would be, if all the terms had expired, then council would be required to set more folks onto the salary commission in order to increase, or in order to consider increases or decreases to council's salary.
Thank you, Sean. Jennifer.
So it sounds like there would not necessarily need to be a staff liaison, but staff would have to spend some kind of time prepping the salary commission. Is that correct? And so what would the staff commitment look like?
Absolutely, there would need to be staff help as this moved forward. I'm not sure exactly what that commitment would look like. I don't recall how much goes into what the salary commission decides. They could do a very in-depth process, or they could do a very simple determination. Much like the salary survey that you looked at today, oftentimes the salary commission will look at the salaries of other council members, other councils across the other local jurisdictions and other similar jurisdictions, and they'll make decisions based upon that. But there is nothing in the ordinance, or there's nothing in state law that says how much time they must spend on it and who must spend time on it. So that would ultimately come down to Regan to determine, and the city manager to determine how much staff time would be devoted to for staff to work with the salary commission on coming up with whatever their recommendations are for council salary.
So in theory, it would be the same as Noreen put together for us, but presented to the commission. And then if the commission goes digging for who knows what, then the city would be responsible for pulling that data.
Yeah, that's correct. I would say we wouldn't allow that to continue to keep going. At a certain point, we'd have a deadline put on it and be done. Because it's not like there's more and more information we can keep giving them, right? So it's a box of information that we provide for them, and then they can dig through that.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Sean?
Help me understand. So this commission would, as I understand it, set salaries for the council. Would it also set salaries for staff as well?
No, it would not.
Okay.
It's solely for the elected officials.
Feel better. Okay, great.
Anybody else? Joe?
First, I want to thank you all for even having this discussion, as I brought it up last month. I think this is personally, I think this is a good idea. Yes, we still have, I'm sure we're going to always have questions about this, and 2 years down the line, if we decide this is where we want to go, and 2 years down the line we implement it, or we implement it in 6 months, whatever, there's always going to be questions and thoughts and on it. But I think the benefit of it is it takes us out of it. The only thing we do is we just say, well, Jeff thinks these 4 people would be great. We look at the information from what he got, and then we approve or say no, pick 2 different ones, pick 4 different ones, or whatever. I think that's a good start for us. I think honestly, the benefit is it takes us out of it, and it doesn't look like we're trying to pad our pockets.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah. Anybody else? Beth?
So another quick question for you, Mark. Can we create an ordinance for just like a 4-year term, just one? Because in theory, we're only probably going to be going through this every 5 years. So if it's 1 term, they're elected, they'll do their job, and they'll be kind of in arrears there if we need them to pop up. And then the next time a salary potential increase might come up, we have another commission. So they're not sitting there for potentially 2 years, not doing anything, or for 2 terms. It seems like we should be reevaluating the people every time, because we don't know when we don't necessarily know when we would go through the process, but probably every 4 or 5 years seems to be the cadence?
Well, if a term only allows them to be for 4 years anyway. Because you
Okay,
can only set them for
maximum
2.
But we'd have to have them reapply kind of scenario.
But no, they wouldn't reapply. The mayor, whoever the mayor is, would select them, whether they go back to the same pool or they choose somebody else. And then bring those names to the council.
So it would be 1 term, 4 years.
That's
but the-
provided in the RCW.
Okay.
And to be clear, I would have to look into what the actual terms would be for the commission or for the salary commissioners, because all it says is they may not be appointed to more than 2 terms. And I would need to look at other cities to see how long the terms have been set, but that's likely within council's discretion to set for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4-year terms or something like that. But I would wait to that's my off the cuff response to that. And I would want to do a little more research into that before bringing in, which I would do before bringing an ordinance back to you. And Councilmember Porter, to answer your question about whether you could do this as a temporary one-time thing, I believe you would be able to do this as a one-time thing that would have a sunset provision on the ordinance. You would establish it for X amount of time, and then it would cease to exist and would repeal automatically. I'm not sure the benefit of doing that when the mayor will always be establishing it regardless. But I do understand that. I think that would work. But I've never seen another city do that. Most of the time it's you establish a salary commission and then you are a salary commission from there on out. But council could always choose to repeal the salary commission ordinance and go back to delegate or to go back to setting their own salaries as they see fit.
I guess I was thinking.
Okay, thank you.
And then any other cities that you've already looked at? I mean, is that information that would come back to us so that we could see what other cities are actually doing?
So in Kent, they have a salary commission and they only look at their salaries like every 5 years. And each time the mayor selects a different commission, some of the members may be reappointed, but they choose it.
They go through the process
They go through the process each time.
Got it. Thank you.
I believe Auburn does the same thing. Okay, any other questions? So does council, is there consensus to have Mark bring this back at a later date with an ordinance for further consideration? Thumbs up. Okay. It's unanimous to bring this back, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council.
Next is new business item number 8, discuss funding for human services needs assessment. Julie, thank you for sticking around.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here so late. If you remember a few weeks ago, we had our joint meeting and we discussed the assessment and doing a comprehensive human services assessment. I believe that tonight we need to make a decision on whether that will be paid for out of the $30,000 that's unallocated, or if that will be something in addition that will be funded that way. And also I just wanted to give an update on, so I've done a little bit of research. I started with the University of Washington, and Darren, I'm thankful, has a connection at Central. And between the two of us, we're finding some really good leads at both of those schools. And so more than likely, we will be doing the assessment through either the University of Washington or Central. We're going to be having a conversation with Central tomorrow and then UW the following week. So we're trying to fit it in here as quick as we can, but it does sound like we might have a cost-effective option with going with those universities. So I do think we have to have a discussion on how that's funded. Is that correct?
Well, that's why council asked us to bring it back. Unfortunately, as we anticipated, we wouldn't have those numbers, how much it would cost to do at tonight's meeting. Thank you to Julie for working on that. A scope of work has been developed. We're trying to make sure that scope of work fits within 1590 requirements. Then the funds that we have in reserve in 1590 could be used for it, but that, based on what the commission wants the survey to accomplish, it may fall outside of the parameters of 1590. So they're, like Julie said, the commission's already been funded 30,000. It's in the budget, so they could use that or a portion of that for this and not need council authorization. Or we're just gonna have to pull some funds from the general fund once we know what that costs will be.
So what we're looking for tonight is council consensus whether to use money from the general fund or to use the excess money that is sitting in the human services fund of 30,000.
I believe,
I would say the 30,000, the council's already given that to the commission to use, so
Yes.
you don't need to authorize that.
That, okay.
It's really, if you want to authorize anything above
and-
that.
yeah.
Okay, all
And
right.
then HB 1590 at this point doesn't seem like a good fit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what we're looking, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So let me rephrase that. So what we're looking at from council is if we want to authorize extra funds over and above what is already there,
Correct.
Yeah.
if needed.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. Does council have any questions? Joe?
Is there, you said you're having a meeting tomorrow and a
I
meeting
am.
next week,
Yeah,
and thank you for having those meetings.
it's no problem.
Like the real question is, do you think you'll have numbers from either one of the schools?
I definitely do think we'll have numbers like fairly soon.
So do you think we could get, if you get those numbers before our next council meeting, which I'm hoping you would, could we maybe push this question off until the next meeting? Because I'll tell you right now, without knowing a possible number, I'm not gonna say yes to anything without that, so.
Is waiting until December 12th too late though to do this assessment?
Well, doing the assessment will be done next year,
Well, I mean,
but the funding of it, we could prepare it so it's included in the budget that you need to adopt that night as well.
Fix it during budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we wait until on December 12th with real numbers of what it may or may not be, we can make that decision on whether to pull it from the general fund or not on the 12th. And that will not slow down the budget approval.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, like Casey mentioned, if we do it, fund it through a budget amendment, it kind of takes away the time constraints that are now placed on you, right? It was brought up at the Human Services meeting and we were kind of prepared for that because it wasn't an agenda item. So we kind of went through this big task to try to get this done in the 11th hour. But if we're just doing a budget amendment to change the budget next year on this, it's probably going to be a small cost. We could bring this back to council in January if you want.
What's easier well, I have two questions. What's easier for staff on the budget?
Either way is fine.
Okay. What's easier for human services?
I mean, I think it's gonna depend on the timelining of the schools as well. You know, like when their quarters and semesters are too, because I anticipate this being like a project for a graduating, like graduate student. So I think I'll know more about that soon.
So if we waited until, say, the first meeting in January to do a budget amendment, do you feel, and I know this is all guesstimate, do you feel that that gives the school enough time and notice to be able to get it done?
I think so. Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
My guess is, if we funded it in December and notified the school, they wouldn't start the work till January anyway, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we could do it.
Yeah.
So,
Just a lucky guess.
I think you're probably right on that.
so is it possible to do a budget amendment during the first meeting of January?
So what would happen is the council would authorize the funding, and then when Casey does her regular budget amendment, it would be included in that,
Okay,
so.
does council wish to wait until January to get more numbers before we make a decision?
Yes.
Give it a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So we'll wait until do a budget amendment when you have time to get more information.
That sounds great. I would appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you again for sticking around tonight.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all very much. A very good meeting. So looking at future agenda items, we have our next meeting on December 12th, 6 o'clock is the Aquatic Recreation Center options. And then our regular meeting will start at 7 o'clock and our budget will be on there. And right now we have a very long consent agenda. Let's go to council staff comments. Start with Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We have Shop with the Cop December 9th at Walmart at 8 or 8:30. I'll finalize the time for you and send that on an email. If you are in contact with a family that is of need of this, please contact me so I can reach out to them. It is by invitation only, so it's not for the general public. So if you do have that, provide the information to me, I will contact them and sign up. Yes.
Question on how do you determine need, and does it have to be a Covington family?
No, it does not have to be a Covington family.
Okay.
And the need is based on someone who would be positively impacted by having an interaction with a police officer.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
Noreen?
Nothing necessarily business related, but since I don't anticipate it being at the next council meeting, I just wanted to wish the council a happy holiday season.
Thank you, Noreen. Ethan?
Yeah, hi, council. Along the lines of being the holiday season, I'll plug that we have the tree lighting coming up this Saturday, December 2nd. I think you all probably know about that. That should be fun. And we also have a holiday swim at the Aquatic Center after that evening. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan. Don?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thanks, Don. Selena?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thanks, Selena. Casey?
I was just gonna mention that we received an email from the auditor's office today to schedule our exit interview. So as soon as I get the agenda packet, I'll send it out to everybody. It'll be virtual this year. So let me know if you'd like to attend. And we got a clean audit this year, so we're all done.
And quicker than last year.
Yeah.
Good job. Thanks, Casey. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. I did some quick research in between my presentation and now, and it appears that the salary commissioners would be appointed for a term. The term would just be whatever it was to set the salary at that moment, but the person could only do 2 of those. So whenever they were convened, they'd be convened for as long as it took for the salary commission to make a determination on salaries for the council. Other than that, there's no executive session tonight, and I have no further report.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Regan?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Regan. Krista?
Nothing further from me either. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth?
Oh, thanks everybody for all the information and with the session, and there's just a lot to absorb this time of year as everybody's wrapping everything up. So appreciate everybody's patience. Happy holidays. Noreen, if I don't leave for you. And looking forward to the upcoming holiday events. Shop with the Cops, I think they raised about $20,000 for that event. So they hope they can outfit 278 kids, if that's enough, if that's how many show up. So looking forward to that. I'll be there.
Thanks, Beth. Sean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things. Puget Sound Regional Fire Authority has last meeting last Wednesday. I guess the major thing that came out of that is we're no longer meeting in Covington. That was the last meeting of the RFA in Covington. Will now move to Kent to accommodate 3 new board members from Tukwila. So that facility is not big enough. We'll also at our next meeting, which will take place at the Kent training facility, we're going to recognize the retirement of Les Thomas and Alan Barry, who have both been long-term RFA members, and they're stepping down. So, and then the only other thing, I went to the Apple Cup this last weekend, and that's not I actually, before I got to go to a reception and actually met with the governor, and I took the opportunity to glad hand him and talked about funding for State Route 18, and that we'd like to see that maintained, as well as mention some of the planning challenges that we're having, and with a number of the deadlines coming up at the exact same time. So be happy to close the loop with you, Regan, on both of those if you want me to follow up. So
okay,
that's it.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Debbie?
Thank you. Nice work, Sean. I didn't meet anybody impressive over the weekend, but I did go to some fun meetings over the last 2 weeks. So on skateboard, they are working on finalizing their legislative agenda. It'll align nicely with what I think our number 1 was, and that was around encouraging the legislators to continue ongoing support for funding for improvement of highway projects and maintenance and preservation of existing infrastructure. And then I've been sitting in on Skip while Christina's out. And I got to see an overview of the 6 new sites that are coming up that we're financially supporting. 2 in Kent, 1 in Des Moines, 1 in Auburn, 1 in Beering, and 1 in Skyway. All the prerequisites for these centers are that they be near public transit, ideally the new light rail, which I think almost all of them were, and that they have a community center component and an early education development center. So there's one really large one going in at the Kent Des Moines highway up by Midway. That will it's going to be huge, housing, community center, stores. So it's really bringing the whole community. When you say for all, I mean, it's really including everyone in all of the services and bringing people from outside of that small community into that community for shopping. So it's, anyway, I was impressed with the way that's working. And I felt good that we've given them a big chunk of the money to help. That's all I had.
Thanks, Debbie. Jennifer.
I do not have anything tonight.
Thanks, Jennifer. Joe.
Hoping everyone's staying warm. It's kind of cold out there, realizing that at 5 o'clock in the morning when I walk the dog. This last week, we got a lot of bad emails from Regan, I'll say. Our crime rates we've been getting a lot of emails about crime recently. But the one that struck me the hardest was last Friday when one of our residents, a senior at Kent Lake, was killed in a car accident. I had a phone call with Regan after that, and he could sense that I was a little heated. But he gave me some, and let me know that there's probably nothing we can do because this probably could. I'm not saying this would be 100% prevented, but this act was committed by the use of a stolen car, and we can't. And our police officers. None of the officers can chase a stolen car unless they've witnessed some other issues. The cities and a lot of counties used a lot of their political capital last year just to get the changes we made to the pursuit laws. I though would, however, ask us as elected officials to just quietly remind, or not even quietly, we can do it loudly from the top of a building. I don't care how we do it. Remind our legislators, our 47th district legislators, that yes, we agree there needs to be changes to pursuit laws. There needs to be protections put in for the innocent people that could be affected. But when the innocent are affected because the person driving the stolen car decides that they care more about the stolen car than accepting the responsibility of their actions and taking the life of someone under the age of 18, there needs to be consequences. There needs to be ability for us to go after these people. And if that means we have to go on a police chase, I'm not saying that the person would have lived. I'm not saying the accident wouldn't have happened. But we can say that this pursuit law did not do its job.
Already started, Joe. Anything else, sir?
No, because if I say anything else, I'm gonna start crying.
Thank you. Tree lighting, like Ethan said, 4 o'clock at Don Henning Roundabout. That morning, we also have a ribbon cutting at 10 a.m. for a new business, Billy B's Barbershop, right where Covington Way and Kent Kangley join. I am meeting with Superintendent Vela on next Tuesday, December 5th. So if you have any questions or anything you'd like to bring up, Joe.
Yeah, can you ask if I can get paid for my 18 weeks I'm there?
Please let me know. SCA, Debbie and I are going to the annual meeting. I believe Joe is joining us on the 6th. SCA on the 13th right before the PIC meeting, it will be holding the elections for the board. I have decided I'm not gonna run this year for next year's board. So I will not be at that meeting, so if somebody can be at the December 13th pre-pick meeting for elections to represent Covington.
I'll be there.
Okay, so maybe we can, is there consensus to allow Joe to be our voting representative for Covington? I don't know, do we want that?
I'm already gonna be there,
I
so
said
I
it
mean.
all with my eyes. It was
Maybe I should
hilarious.
show up just, no, I can't, I'm not gonna make it. So, so there's consensus to have Joe as our voting member for, the SCA elections on December 13th at,
Probably 6 o'clock.
it's either 5:45 or 6.
Yeah,
So it's right before, pick. Thank you, Joe. I want to, pass on my thanks to all the volunteers, for the, street volunteer, Adopt a Street, for all the work that they've done. Having them all show up tonight was awesome. But also thanks to all of our commissioners who volunteered. And all of our, I believe we have police, volunteers, or we used to. So just all of our volunteers, everybody that's out there, even the ones that aren't on a commission stuff that volunteer to help make Covington a better place. My thank you for that. It's much appreciated. With that, that is all I have. We will move into our second public comment period. Speakers will state their name, address, and organization. Comments are directed to the city council, not the audience or staff. Comments are to be related to city business. Comments are not intended for conversation or debate and are limited to no more than 4 minutes per speaker. For attendees participating virtually, click the raise hand button in Zoom. For attendees participating by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. Once the city grants you permission to speak, press unmute if participating virtually or dial *6 to unmute if participating by phone. Is there anybody in the audience wishing to address council this evening? Is there anybody online wishing to address council? Seeing nobody raise their hand or approach the podium, we do not have an executive session. This meeting is adjourned at 9:42. Thank you.